Welcome back, the Radium Podcast, episode 19. We got Kevin, KDE, in the building.
Yes, we do.
He sleeps here. We know that by now. Yes. And a special guest, Brian Gaffey. Brian, I'm going to have you kind of introduce yourself. Tell these people a little bit of your background, what you do, all the fun shit.
I've been in the music industry for about 15 years. I started out at an agency called RPM. Did everything from influencer brand marketing to radio promotions to event planning, artist management, a lot of stuff, and flipped that into a label gig with Def Jam for a few years. Left there for a year. Was on my own for a year, and then for the last year, almost exactly to the day, I've been at Interscope Records as the national mix show radio director.
Nice. Interscope Records, that's a big one.
It is. It's fun. It's a gigantic building. It's Def Jam was very small. It still is. It's still a very small company. In comparison, Def Jam was one half of one floor in New York, and they're a quarter of a floor in LA, and Interscope is 5 floors all by itself. Wow, which is kind of crazy.
So Def Jam and Interscope is one thing?
Yes, it's all under the Universal Music umbrella.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I never really understood a lot of that. Like, did those companies just get really big and then start swallowing other companies?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, the Def Jam story is they were trying to, when Lior was trying to get them bought, they were just releasing album after, like the DMX, like he did 2 albums in 1 year.
Gotcha.
They were releasing soundtracks all the time. I remember reading in, did you ever read the Big Payback? It's like the history of hip hop.
No. Is that?
It's an extraordinary book. It literally tells you from, Grandmaster Flash in the Park, Sedgwick, Cedar, all the way up to the 50% vitamin water deal.
Nice.
And it's
I forgot about that.
And it's every little story in between. The Wu-Tang story, Run DMC story, the whole Def Jam story. Chris Lighty's like a hero in it. Like, it's a really amazing. It's like 600-700 pages, and it's just the entire scope. It tells the whole West Coast history, the story of Cash Money,
sick.
And the way it's written is really dope because it's like, it's talking about Grandmaster Flash, and I'll be like, there's this kid, and he was just in the park one day, and then they always tell and then all of a sudden it just kind of sets it up, and you're like, oh shit, they're talking about Grandmaster Flash. It's crazy.
That's tight.
Yeah.
So it's like really storytelling.
Yes, exactly.
That's
exactly.
Awesome.
It's like a history book, would you say?
Yeah, it's a history book, but it flows. It's just so well written. It just flows perfectly. And it kind of leads into the next story. So you're like, oh, I don't want to put this down because I want to hear how this happened. And
right. Yeah. I love that. So what are some of your day-to-days that you do over at Interscope?
I deal heavily on the radio side.
Gotcha.
So and I really deal with the setup of records. So when we get a release date or an impact date means when we actually ship the record to radio and get it massively played. Mm-hmm. I'm the one that kind of sets that up. I do a lot of the underplays. I talk to DJs all day long, and get them to play it on the air for the first time, and then let that first time lead to every day, and then the other guys at the radio station. We try to build the number games up so when they actually go to impact it, they can look at it and go, oh, well, this is getting played 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a week. This is actually a real thing. Gotcha. As opposed to what is this song I've never heard of. And and those guys, the DJs in the radio stations are like the cultural tastemakers, and a lot of these program directors aren't necessarily hip hop guys. A lot of them are very data driven and whatever, so they rely on these guys, these DJs, to kind of tell them what's hot.
Right. So what are people feeling?
Right.
Because people call into the radio stuff. Yeah.
Of course. And then what are they playing in the club? So and I have to ask those kind of questions. If we have an artist that might just be there's a lot of times where it's just a radio song and there's no back and forth for the club. And sometimes it's a gigantic club record and it doesn't really work at radio. But the theory is, if it's popping in the clubs, it should be something at radio. And at least that story can get told from the DJ to his boss. And be like, yo, this is huge out here. And a lot of that is dealing with street teams and walking into clubs and making sure guys are playing a record for the first time. And then, I can visually see the impact and then walk in and tell my boss, like, sometimes they don't want to go for a record, but if I walk in and be like, hey, I was at such and such club the other night,
was popping.
and this record was it. And they're like,
Right.
oh, okay. Well, tell me that might have been in Miami, but maybe it's just a Miami thing. How was it
gotcha.
in New York?
Regional.
How was it in Chicago? How was it in LA? Like, do we build that story out just regionally? Do we go nationally? It's
There's
kind
a
of,
lot of marketing stuff in there. Like you're
Right.
doing a lot of marketing stuff.
and you're trying to do, especially with the DJ driven stuff, you're trying to touch those dudes as much as possible. You want the artist to physically be there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You want them to go through the stations, go through if there's a DJ meetup. Like every city has like a little DJ crew or 2 or 3 DJ crews.
Yeah.
You want them to physically go through, say hi, shake hands, kiss babies. Especially if it's like a club driven artist. And then hopefully those personal relationships go on to really grow. And a lot of times those personal relationships go on for 20 years. I mean, DJ Khaled really became DJ Khaled because of his ability to just build personal relationships based upon him being, first of all, a club DJ. Then he became Fat Joe's Terror Squad DJ. And then he was on 99 Jams in Miami. So when everybody came down to Miami, he had the Fat Joe connection. So everybody just kind of went through and talked to him. Next thing you know, he's doing records with Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Yeah, it's so crazy, the taste making thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Just that connection. It's almost like what a producer would do in like an event sort of thing,
Sure.
fashion, or, just being the guy that people look at as the brand, like
Right.
the cosign.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's really important in music today. And talk about like the thing I want to hear you talk more about is what's going on in radio in 2018.
It's a very interesting time because radio is still just as big as ever, but there's more competition for it. So, most
Gotcha.
people, especially, in middle America, they get in their car, they turn on whatever radio station, they go. So radio is still the biggest driver of new music, no matter what the genre is. But you also, at the same time, have your Spotify's, your Apple Music's, your titles, SoundCloud but I think a lot of those, and we're learning this because this is all new to us all.
Right.
So, and especially now just being back in a label system for a year after a year off where it all happened. Like I wasn't really in a building watching this happen in real time. And then I walked into Interscope the first day. I was like, oh shit, like this is...
Just like overnight.
It's overnight. Like,
Yeah.
I have friends that got jobs just because they knew so-and-so and like they were all just doing all these streaming services. And it's an interesting dynamic where, SoundCloud is very underground. Like it's what you would call, you wouldn't want to call it backpacker rap if you wanted to like equate it to like my era.
Like almost mixtapes and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
right.
Raw, right.
I feel like it for sure. Like this isn't mixed or mastered.
It's the
or ready.
unpolished.
Yeah.
We just it's the streets.
Totally.
Like, just throw it out there. You kind of see what you have. Spotify, I've learned, is very white suburban.
100%. With all their little party mixes. And
Right.
stuff.
And not even that. It's
Yeah.
just the artists that kind of blow off of Spotify versus
Sure.
the artists that blow off of Apple. Apple, I've learned, is very black. I don't know why or
Right.
what the dynamic is, but we have certain artists that like guys that blow in Memphis, they blow off of Apple. Their Spotify is a little less. And then you have certain other artists that they're a little bit more mainstream sounding,
Right.
that really blow off of Spotify, and then Apple's kind of lagging.
That's so interesting, like how different that is.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just because Apple, is a household name, and
Right.
it just, I got Apple on my phone, like
Right. Everyone's got an iPhone, right?
right. So if you're a new person to streaming, like, well, it's right here. What the hell is this Spotify shit?
Yeah,
Like,
it is nice to have like
Right.
the iTunes Apple thing right
Right,
there.
right.
I can't find my Spotify app most of the time.
I have to have it on
like
the front
looking
of
for-
my
yeah.
thing.
You know, Spotify has bigger subscribership. Is the bigger out of the two.
Yes, correct.
But
As of right now.
Apple is grabbing a lot more.
yeah,
they're
right
saying
now.
by the end of the year, Apple will catch up to them.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like
I-
that shows you behemoths,
I
you know?
believe Pandora, I could be wrong, but I believe Pandora has more than all of them, but it skews extraordinarily old. Like
Yeah,
my
sure.
stepdad listens to Pandora because he likes like bluegrass.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can just put it on.
And you just throw it
leave
on, and
yeah.
and it's like it was the first to market. So a lot of these people in their 50s and 60s, like it's just if you're a music guy of that age and you just want to be able to throw on stuff that if you want to listen to Blue Oyster Cult or whatever, like
Right,
70s,
it's like the Facebook of music streaming.
right, right.
You know, the family photos being shared and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also has to do with their like all of these individual platforms have different AI support and things they're bringing into the platforms that are, you know, they're constantly improving the AI and the,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and
And I think
it's
that's
crazy.
that's where radio really needs to start to compete. Like I have the iHeart app.
Gotcha.
And they're starting to get playlists going on the iHeart app, and they're having Alexa, like, you know, if you walk in a room, Alexa play Power
Right.
106.
It's huge.
They've
That's so
started
powerful.
to do that, and
Yeah.
if you don't do that, you're dead.
Yeah,
because I want
100%.
like
You have to adapt the technology.
my niece and nephew are 8 and 10. They walk into my sister's house. Alexa, play Bruno Mars. You know, like Alexa, this like if
and
they,
then they make the music too.
right.
They're like, I can make that record. They
And
just like press a
And
couple
if you
buttons.
can kind of just get these kids to go walk in and go, Alexa, play Hot 97, you know, that will help at least get these kids to continue to listen to radio instead of just running away. Like I was
Right.
at a meeting the other day, and they were like, they've lost something like 50% of their listenership in a certain market, and 25% of those people are never coming back.
That's crazy.
Like, there's
how
nothing you
crazy,
can do.
that would stress me out so much as a
Right.
business owner.
Right.
Or like anyone part of the business, like, okay, what are we going to do, guys?
Right.
Right.
So you have to morph and you have to adapt, and I don't know
Constantly.
where that comes from a programmer standpoint or whatever. Like that's just, you know, that
I feel like you're right on target there. I think it has a lot to do with the actual medium,
right.
right? Because like if I have my phone and I can't just like go right onto the radio,
Right.
why would I fuck with that?
Right.
When I could just go to Spotify or Apple Music or
Right.
anything else instantly.
You think it's the convenience thing?
I
That-
think
yeah.
I think it's that and then the play for the pro radio thing, and this is not necessarily true all over the country, but you have a lot of, because just there's multinational conglomerates are now, you know, they own so many radio stations.
Yeah.
But Hot 97 sounds and feels like New York City.
Gotcha. Yeah. Good point.
Power 106 sounds and feels like Los Angeles. Like you
Right.
have that locality. If you want that, you know, some people just give me song after song after song after
Yeah.
song.
Right.
But if you want to have like that vibe and you want to know who those personalities are and you want to trust people in your market to play songs that you feel like would fit your market,
Sure.
then radio is still always going to be the number one thing.
That's a good point. Like when you come to LA and you're like driving down the beach coast, Malibu, and you just want to like hear LA's sound.
Right. Like there's nothing to me. I mean, maybe a lot is it because I'm older. Like I love going into a city on a Friday or Saturday night and turning on whatever their local hip hop station is
Totally.
and just
Yeah.
sounding, you know, because Atlanta just is so different than New York. Chicago's different
Right.
than Miami.
New Orleans.
Yeah, and you'll hear shit that you've never heard of in your life. Like, oh, what is this? Like, especially like Atlanta, New Orleans, Miami. Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, LA's kind of a conglomerate of, you know.
I mean, well,
everything.
no, not really, because you know, I had O3 Greedo at radio the other day. Like, there's nowhere, like, you know, O3 Greedo's a West Coast dude. Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna hear him in New York.
Good point. Good
And
point.
then there's certain acts like, you know, Uncle Murder in New York or Papoose or whoever. Like, those are homegrown talents that really only get to Hartford, Philly, Boston.
For sure.
Like,
Yeah.
that's just kind of
Like
a thing.
I'm like, who are those guys?
right,
Well,
What are you talking about, radio?
You
guy?
won't hear too much about Greedo anymore because of the
Right.
The
No, I
stint.
know.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think one aspect of the you know, just the change in radio and, you know, what's going on in 2018 is the fact that media is being produced so fast now.
Right.
I think the release,
content
the
wars.
content wars is what we call them, but
So crazy.
it's talk about like the speed of records and like, you know, the release schedules these
I've never
days.
seen like just a speed of, because it's like the mixtape. Like everybody's a mixtape artist all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know, we're like, you know, like
We
50,
don't make records. We need to just
50
put
was
stuff
dropping
out.
mixtapes every couple months, like, you know, in that era, like when they were
Yeah.
just like the artist mixtape era. And I think these kids took that concept and they didn't have to go physically burn CDs and put them on Canal Street and whatever.
Yeah, good
now it's
point.
all digital and it's just on steroids.
It's instant, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And and I know just from managing an artist how records get old to you very quickly, just personally. You might have taken 3 or 4 weeks to actually write the song and get it produced and get it mixed and get it mastered, and then it's out for a month or two, and you're like, all right, this shit is old to me. Like, what's next?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
next? And then like on a label side, you're like, yo, no, like I need this to like sit here and marinate and like, you know. We have LMA, that record was out for a year, and now it's the biggest song of the summer a year and a half later.
That's crazy.
So,
I never
you know,
think about that.
sometimes
Yeah.
things can just need to just kind of sit there and allow people to find them without just getting buried by more and more and more and more.
Right. I almost equate it to the art world. There's fine art where you go to the gallery and this guy spent, you know, the last year and a half putting together this show, and it's amazing. Like, it's almost life-changing, and it's something really important, and the art goes for a lot of money and it lasts a long time. And then there's the guy out on Fisherman's Wharf doing the spray painting with the stuff, and he's going, shh, you know, and he's like $10.
Right.
But he's just like blasting them out.
Right.
And people are like, yeah, that's kind of cool. And they put it in their house, but then it ends up in the garage in like 3 months because they're like, that's not that cool. That was our San Francisco trip, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
And I don't even think it's like the quality, because I mean, Gucci was.
Yeah.
I read the Gucci autobiography. That guy, I can't even imagine. I think Wayne must have been like that. Pac must have been like that, where you're
right.
like
just cranking
3 or
out.
4 songs a
couple
day.
days,
Like,
yeah.
just like, he was like,
They
he
call
was
them
talking
studio
about it
rats.
when he went into like his mixtape phase. One of his stints out of prison, like he was like, I'll do a mixtape with you. He's like, we're in the studio right now, and I'm like, this guy did a mixtape in one day. Like, this is nuts.
Now that's like normal.
And now it's
Yeah,
normal, right?
That's the standard.
Right.
Yeah, all these guys like feature, like it's amazing how fast the material comes out. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Well, that's he was in the studio of Future. That's when they did the free bricks.
Yeah.
Free
Right.
bricks mixtape.
Right.
And then they were just like vibing. He's like, yo, I want to do a mixtape with you. He's like, well, we're here.
Let's do it right now.
And Future's like, all right, I'm here too.
We got 80 billion beats on our hard.
Should we attribute all that to Gucci or Atlanta at the very least?
I would think so. Maybe a little bit of 50. Like just kind of, because I think 50 really created like that artist.
Yeah, 50 was
mixtape.
definitely on that.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't the volume of it. Like he wasn't like boom, 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 boom. But 50 Cent's The Future is one of the most influential mixtapes ever from an artist standpoint. And then 50, and then probably Wayne.
Yeah.
Let's not forget about the
Wayne,
Tank. though,
Wayne
you know?
definitely had that.
Let's not forget about the Tank and Master P and that whole group. You
Right,
know?
but those were like legit sold albums. Like they were like actually
Barcodes and shit,
barcoded.
yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Right.
Good point. But it still felt like at that time you couldn't go to the record store. Like they had whole sections.
Yeah, and I went to college in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm from Connecticut, and my freshman year was the fall of '97. So that was like their beginning of their like peak.
It was out of control.
So I never really fucked with them. Like I'm essentially a New York City kid. Like, I grew up 90 miles from New York and 90 miles from Boston.
Yeah.
So I would go to Canal Street, buy mixtapes, whatever, Harlem Music Hut. We had our own little spots in Connecticut. Like I just listened to whatever Clue or Tony Touch or whoever like
Yeah,
that
right.
was playing. Like these guys were never playing. Like I remember the first time I heard Juvenile High, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And like, or just like Master P stuff. Like there was just Ice Cream Man. Like I was like, "This is lame." And then by the end of my freshman year, I was all into it. Like it was just like the greatest thing in the world.
Oh yeah, dude, that shit was so dope.
I wanted
man.
a tank chain, everything.
They definitely needed to they took time to polish.
Right.
You know, when they
Right.
first started, you're like, what is this?
Yeah, and then I was
garbage?
like, I was DJing, so I had like a whole No Limit Cash Money, like me
Right?
at X Records and
crazy.
See Murder and like
C Murder was
Murder,
so
yeah.
dope. Because that shit, you know, like my brother had a 91 Prelude.
I had a 93 Prelude.
Okay,
Oh.
you know what I mean? And he had the 210s in the back.
Right.
And I remember one catching on fire when we were listening to C Murda. But like we were like
Free C Murda.
Right, Free C Murda. But we didn't give a shit about like how good the music was.
Right.
We just wanted the shit that made those tens like just
right.
And if you couldn't feel it, we didn't fuck with it.
Silk the Shocker never rapped on beat.
Silk the Shocker, I didn't care about any of that shit. But like when they, when you put any of those records on, they just made your whole car shake. And that was just probably just bad mastering.
Oh yeah. I mean,
we fucking loved it.
Like bad mastering. Like did you ever go listen to 36 Chambers?
Yeah, 100%.
Like it sounded like they mastered it underwater. and honestly, at the end of the day, they probably never mastered it. Like,
yeah, no. And even in a basement somewhere.
It doesn't matter what you get if it's on CD. I have it on vinyl. If you try to get like there's no digitally remastered version of it because I think they lost everything in a flood.
That's crazy.
And if you just go listen to it, it's just like put it next to something not even new. Put it next to something
of the same time
from like 96. Like that came out in 93. Put it like, and it's like put like something very glossy, like something like from Bad Boy.
Right. Or like a NERD or something.
Right. And it's just hilarious. Like it's just the decibel level. It's like the same problem with reggae. Because I remember like doing like reggae nights, and just from record to record, you'd be like, oh, I gotta like go up and down with this. Like, I mean,
you're actually using
who knows where these records are getting mixed and mastered, if they ever were.
I don't think they were.
And with reggae, they're just throwing it out. They're like just.
Yeah. They're like jam sessions, pretty much.
Right.
It's not like there's much music out. Like you do one or two things in reggae,
I worked a project for Vibes Cartel, and they were saying that he just studio, the ultimate studio rat, and he just will sit there and do 20 songs a day, just this, just nuts.
See, I wish we can do that here. We got to take like phone calls and stuff, like actually run business. So yeah, dude, I want to talk more about and like add value to all those kids out there that really fuck with this podcast and the Radium podcast and want to know a lot more about how do they get their stuff on the radio.
I always tell people this is just kind of, I would say, the case in like the last 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. Radio is the icing on the cake. It's not the cake. And a lot of people 10, 15, 20 years ago, you would just you'd come out with a single and just go to radio. And that was just kind of a lot of times that was people's whole marketing strategies. Like there was nothing really, put a couple of poster boards in the streets and, have some street teams run around, and then we go to radio. Now you kind of have to grow. Like there's so much stuff coming from major labels, and the organic, I'm just popping in my city, now I'm going to get played on the radio thing is such a crapshoot. Like, it's so rare. I mean, every city probably has like 2 or 3 max just local acts that are just so hot that they're getting played. And I think
how does that happen?
A lot of it is just based on the DJ. Like if you go, the DJs,
like people going out and catching wind of it.
If you're in Atlanta and you're at Magic City and the DJ's playing and the girls are dancing and whatever, like those guys will go back and be like, I have to play this record. Like, the crowd is just too into it. Miami's same way. So and a lot of it's kind of like building relationships. Like New York is very like relationship driven, and like those guys will go very same kind of thing. But radio is so corporate that it has to be. There has to be so much information. So for me to like, even just for like a major label act, like I need to have so much information. What are your streaming numbers? What are your fans? Are you touring? What is the story that I have other than what differentiates this okay, cool record between this okay, cool record? Right,
because you're getting a lot of those coming in.
Right. And even like hits, even like No Brainer, I can't imagine this to be a hit. You still need to have a story behind it.
Right.
Like we have Juice WRLD, who is just the biggest streaming artist in the world right now. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to radio now after 2 months of him being the biggest guy on all streaming platforms.
Is that because like his stuff's not really like super in the club?
It's definitely not like a club ready thing. Right. It's just really well written songs and just musically it's really good. But radio is the after, like we tell people now, radio is when you want to go step from doing 2,000 person venues into arenas? Do you want to do festivals and become like, do you want your mom, like your friend's moms to know like who you are? Like I was like my mom's not listening to hip hop radio, but my sister is, and she's like 42. So, once I always know, once my sister knows, she's like, oh, what are you working on? X, Y, and Z. She's like, oh, I've heard of that person. Like, that's when I know that artist has made it. Like, if you're
right, they're ready for
42-year-old white woman in the middle of Connecticut that knows who you are. Like,
on the local hip hop station,
right?
and they're probably like playing on more general radio stations at that point, right?
Right. Yeah. And then so I would say like my advice would be to make sure all your ducks are in a row, and make sure all the stats are there, because first of all, it's an expensive thing. Indie promoters are very expensive. And they're not all exactly the most reputable human beings in the world.
Right.
Okay, you played at like 4 a.m.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
right.
bro, just give me that money and I'll
right.
get you
And that's the
played.
thing. Like that happens, unfortunately. So I would say, get everything done, get your fan base down, get your streams up, figure out some guy to get your SEO looking properly, get your website right, like find people to do SoundCloud reposting, and get on the Spotify playlist, you get on Most Necessary, and try to work towards a Rap Caviar or something like that. Like, and then once you have all that there, you'll probably have a record deal, and I'll just work your record anyway.
Right. You probably worked your ass off and earned it. So,
right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times these people, like these kids now, you could sign to an empire, you could sign like to basically a distribution company, and then just hire smart, reputable people, and you're good.
Like you.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I want to know too, and for our audience, is like, talk about the radio record, and I'm sure you see things that work, to that audience.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely and I think it's kind of like a logical thing why certain things work on radio and why I don't. Like, I wouldn't want to call radio records softer, but they're definitely more like melodic. I was always curious as to how Lil Pump was going to go at radio, because it's just hard. It's not something that a 28-year-old female with a 5-year-old in the back seat necessarily wants to hear at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I watch World Star hip hop stuff. So come on now.
Right.
You're like, exactly.
Now you nailed it. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like more of the melodic side of things. Like, you're always going to have, like back in the day, we would have like almost like 3 records. We would have your street record, like your mixtape, whatever came popping on the mixtape, then like your actual like street record that we were going to try to work to just mix show radio in the clubs and stuff, and see what was going from there. And then we would have your more melodic radio, quote unquote, record.
Like just come, we're coming home.
Right.
Like that.
Right. Like, say like 50 would be like Wanksta in the club. It just kind of like, although that's
like
not,
Candy Shop.
Right.
Was like a really good record.
That's a radio record.
Radio, right.
I forget what the actual street record was for that. But there was always like, like I remember when I worked Fat Joe and Make It Rain, we had like 2 or 3 like just street mixtape records moving on, and then you had Make It Rain that you just knew, like, I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, good point. It's like those catchy things.
Right. And Jeezy does that to this day. Ross does that to this day, because that's how those guys were trained, is like, I have my street, I got to get this on lock, and then I have this in the chamber.
That's a good point.
This is for radio.
Yeah, I think about like even like Riding Dirty,
Right.
That was such a good radio record from, a group that really wasn't
melodic.
Yeah, they weren't super radio, but it was super catchy.
Right. And you can...
It's about running drugs. Like,
I always
come on,
feel like if you can hear a song and then after 10 seconds you can remember what the hook is, or at least what the melody was, you have something that could work at radio.
So you basically need the earworms, because I feel like
yeah.
And I don't know, maybe you can
I think that's what Boot Up. It's in my freaking head since I started taking her on promo in March, and it hasn't left my head since.
That's crazy.
And it's also like omnipresent at this point, so it's...
Yeah, once that happens, you're like at the grocery store,
right,
going through Whole Foods,
right.
and you're hearing the records. You're like, okay.
Although Nas's Coming was on my head today, and I don't know why that, because it's just not a good song.
I
People
wonder.
are hating on that album a lot, huh?
Are they hating?
I love Nas.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just there.
Yeah.
It's just there.
It's
like,
just there.
It's not a bad album. Like, it's
Right.
not. It's just, but it's just there. And for Nas, that's not good enough.
Yeah. Amen.
I want to know, like, how did the records like Bad and Bougie do on the radio? Did those do well?
Huge.
Yeah,
yes.
huge. Yeah.
But their initial stuff didn't. Like, it took them a long time. They have to cultivate a relationship at radio, especially when you're kind of coming from that side of things. You're more like a mixtape internet guy. Like I don't think Hannah Montana did anything. I mean, I could look it up, but I don't think Hannah Montana did much of anything at radio.
Right.
But it was a gigantic club record. It probably did really well in Atlanta and the Southeast, but I don't think on a national scale it did anything. But yeah, and eventually, once you just keep, like, the Migos are such a fascinating story, because the volume was just so
Insane.
it just on top of each other, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
All the features.
Yeah, and they're just very present, and constantly doing shows, and the fan base just kept growing and growing and growing.
They didn't do interviews very well.
No,
I think.
they're not.
Yeah, they're not known for their interviews.
They're not great at interviews. That's Joe Budden.
Yeah, that's lit. I saw their interviews. It's so funny.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
whole Joe Budden.
at the end of the day, they just don't give a fuck. Certain people,
they don't care, right?
right? They just don't give a fuck, and it's fine. Like,
and that's good for them, man.
I've dealt with that my whole career. Artists that just don't want to fucking do radio, don't want to do interviews. Like, just want to go make their music, go to their shows, get their money.
Fair enough.
And that's fine. I would just like to know that sometimes before I get into it.
All right, yeah, go, Brian. Go start that interview.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, this is just how it is. All right, fine.
All right, cool.
Let me just warn these people ahead of time, and we're good.
Right.
Because some of these guys are just they're not into it. They don't want to sit there and talk to people they don't know all day long and get asked the same questions over and over again.
Unfortunately, that like comes with the territory.
Right.
Like, you want to be a superstar, you're in the limelight. It's just the way it works.
Totally.
You're going to answer questions. You're going to get interviewed. People are going to want your autograph.
Right.
You're going to sign titties.
Speaking
It's
of the
unfortunate,
Migos,
but
how did the whole Cardi B thing work on the radio? Because I felt like she went crazy.
Yeah,
the second she hit radio.
I would love to know how it broke out more or less, because I knew that was a smash. I went to these kids I know to this party called it's not called it anymore. It was called Henny Palooza. Now it's called Douce Palooza.
Nice.
It started in literally in like somebody's backyard, like 5 or 6 years ago in Brooklyn, or what was it, Brooklyn? I don't know, somewhere in New York.
That's Mall and what's the name from the guys from Joe Budden podcast, right?
No.
Are they involved in it?
They're involved in it. Yeah,
Okay.
there's like my friend Niles is involved in it. Shout out to
Gotcha.
Niles. Niles works at Capitol.
Nice.
He does the job that I used to do at Interscope. He worked at Interscope. I took his job. He went to Capitol. So he's involved as well. And I remember going, and she came out and she did like 2 bars, and all of Terminal 5, which is like 3,000 people, sang the rest of the record.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh shit. Like, and this is like maybe 2 months into it being out. I was like, this is crazy. This is going to be like a real thing. I just wonder how it's going to react. And obviously she was on a TV show, so her name was known nationally. It's not like she was just like some New York rapper.
Right.
And
that's huge. You were on a TV show.
Right.
But there was a lot of those girls on the TV show who had record deals. And were trying to put out music.
It just caught fire. Like I don't know. Like, I've ever seen something just run up the chart and then just stay there. Like, it was there for like 5 or 6 weeks for like every day. Like, oh, Cardi B's #1 again.
Yeah. Well, now she's got to search for that next thing, right?
She has 2 records right now, and my format is rhythm radio, which I always say rhythm is like, if you walk into any club in America, that's rhythm radio. Like, that's just, it's a little bit of pop, a little bit of hip hop,
top 40,
not really necessarily R&B. It's literally crossover.
Yeah, it is a crossover.
So she has 2 records in the top 3 right now, crossover. Wow. Be careful.
That's the thing, man.
She
she like, the cool thing is her and her camp get to learn from everyone that came before her.
Right. And she did everything right with her rollout. Like, I would see, like, my friends, my old landlord works at Atlantic, and they would take her on the road, and she went to every radio station. She was always like shaking hands, like, you know, a lot of people don't want to put in that effort, and especially as your record's going, because a lot of times a record will get to a certain point and be like, all right, I don't need to do this anymore.
Right.
Like, she just kept going.
It's like marketing, you know, you put in like 50% of your budget into marketing, and then people let it take off, and then they take the marketing budget down. She like just kept it up there.
Like, I remember I was in, then this wasn't her fault, but I was in Florida with Iggy Azalea when Fancy came out, and I was just going to take her from station to station, and you know, as the record grow, whatever, and all of a sudden we get to the end, and this was supposed to be, I was supposed to do Florida, then we were going to do a West Coast run, then we are going to swing back and go to Northeast, So by the time we got done with Florida, Fancy was already like through the roof, and Def Jam was like, Brian, just come home. We're not doing it.
Stop. We don't want to spend any more money.
We're not doing it anymore. It's not even worth it. Just come home. So that's Fancy was another thing. Was just kind of like overnight. I would say we were running around for like 3 weeks, and we're like, oh shit,
that's massive.
We went from like going to like, she likes this restaurant, Pollo Tropical. It's like a fast food rotisserie chicken kind of spot. Nice. And we were just like, any city we were in, she's like, oh, Brian, Pollo Tropical, pull over. And then it got to the point by the last one, like she started getting recognized. And this has only been like a week.
That's crazy.
And I was like, wow, this is crazy. Icky, you just blew up like that.
Yeah. All it takes is one of those massive records.
Right.
Yeah. Happened to Designer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Definitely. And there was a huge bidding war for him. That was crazy. That was, I had just left Def Jam when that came out.
Yeah, Good Music got him. That's crazy.
Yes.
Under which label though? Because I know Good Music is
Def Jam.
Def Jam. Okay. Yeah. So that kind of happened right after you.
Right after I left.
Okay.
Yes. I left the top of the year that year. So that was 2015? 2016? Yeah, 2016. Right. And I got hired 2016.
You know who's like just massive right now on obviously we know Drake. Drake is like, his numbers are like astronomical. Like,
right.
I don't even know if the music is as good as his brand is right now.
Sure.
Right.
Like, how do his records stay at the number one? I mean, I just see it on the billboards, on the radio. You think it's just...
So radio has this thing called research. And depending on how each station does it is different. Sometimes they call out and they'll play like a 5-second snippet of a hook, and they're like, is this memorable to you? And then you say yes or no, and then there's always like a score of like how these songs do. And
right, they have the same thing in films as well.
Right, I'm sure.
Testing.
They just score extraordinarily well. And I don't know if that's just because he's just Drake and he's everywhere and you can't really escape, you know, Nice for What or whatever. Like,
right, he's Apple right now.
You're just going to know whether you like that song or not. You're going to at least know it. So that's like there's like a score. Like, are you familiar? Yes. Do you actually like it? Nah, not really. But the familiarity means more than the
right.
Do you actually like this? Because if you're familiar, you might not change the dial. If you don't like it,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, gotcha. It's crazy how that stuff works. Like in the film industry, they go through, you know, making the whole film, like basically having a rough draft of everything down, and then they get a theater packed with people, and they go through basically a testing process where they're like, okay, everyone watch this movie. And then they grade it, and then if it scores really high, they're just like, everyone's just out of control. If it scores anywhere near like a 70% or anything, they go and like rewrite, re-edit, re-score, redo so much stuff on it. And I don't know if that's like really what you're talking about in the music, but I wonder how much...
they just pull it out of
right,
rotation.
they just say, hey, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, so, you know, you can like say like a Little Pump or something like that. That's a little harsh for radio. Perfect for SoundCloud, like streaming. It's perfect for streaming. Like him, XXX, whatever, like all those like kind of, you know, Smoke Perp, like those kids are just perfect for the streaming world and live shows and just energy. Even those guys a little bit more melodic, but it's like, you know, once those like say like Lil Pump, like he was like the biggest streaming artist in the world at one point, and he ran up the radio charts, and then once the research hit, it fell immediately.
Right.
Yeah. So they were just they had it in rotation like crazy.
Yeah, like they'll put it in, like they'll believe what streaming says. Like, yeah, okay, like of course, like if this is this, then we'll follow you. But then once they get their own, because there are, there is like a Venn diagram of people that use Spotify and people that actually listen to terrestrial radio. But they're also two very different people as well.
Yeah. I think people have to understand, like, the big thing I'm getting out of this is that it's expensive, right? And it's a
Yes.
big, it's big business for radio.
Right.
And you can't just go like, oh, you're dope.
Right.
I like your song. I'm going to go play it. Like, they're like, yeah, this tested bad. So
And there's
pull
only,
it.
it's not like SoundCloud where you could just put 100 songs.
Just put it up there, right.
Put 100, no, and even like on a playlist. Like you could throw 100 songs on a playlist. That's fine.
Yeah.
A radio playlist, they have to play X amount of songs per hour. They want to play the hits X amount of times per day. So the theory has always been, if there's like a major song out, they want you to hear that song almost every time you get in your car.
Right. And this is like really coming down to selling advertising space, yeah?
Right.
Yeah, like sponsorship.
There's always like this joke of like, if radio stations could just run commercials, they would.
Right. TV, same thing with TV.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, it's interesting because, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon are really the streaming for, the visual stuff, and Spotify and Apple Music and all that is streaming for audio only.
Right.
But I feel like there's like a third thing that's going to happen in the future where all that gets combined. And I know a lot of these, like Amazon's already doing that. Like they want to do their music streaming service and then have their shows and have their movies and stuff as well.
Right. And I think Amazon, the thing about Amazon is you have Spotify, you have Apple, this is what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
Amazon also sells toilet paper and they'll have it delivered to your house in
a day.
2 hours. Like, I think it's hard for a lot of those companies that aren't necessarily just so invested in the culture of music.
Right. They think it's just a business and just jump in.
Yeah, I've walked into an Amazon building and it's sanitized and it's weird and there's no energy. Like
it's sanitized. That is weird for music.
Like, Dame Dash should throw a chair at somebody. Like it just like this is what it was. Okay, Dame's here. Duck.
All right, look out.
How involved are you in like the indie radio, the college radio?
I used to be very heavily. It was one of the main things that I focused on because that was the internet at that point.
Yeah.
Internet radio was kind of like a thing that people listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there was, and that was
that was Pandora, really, the beginning.
And that was really, well, like internet, like they ran commercials and stuff. Like it was like, there was actual host. It was a radio show. It just happened to be on the internet.
Gotcha.
But those have long gone by the wayside.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Like I don't really deal, because
that medium's kind of like
that medium's over. Like there's some, and it's sad because there were some really amazing, like I grew up on college radio, 88.1 ESU Wesleyan. Because we didn't have, Hot 97 could just kind of barely get to me. And that was, well, it wasn't even around. 97 started in 93. So like,
it was a good time for it to start.
7th, 8th grade, like when I was like first like really getting into hip hop, like my college radio show was my now friend Al Lindstrom and one of my best friend's brothers, Al Garland. Like those were our DJs. That's what I listened to. And I would tape them and that's what I listened to throughout the week.
Yeah.
But it's just not like that anymore. Like there's no Stretch and Bobito. There's no, Sway and Tech in the morning. Like that stuff just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I mean, for a moment, I felt like it went to the blogs. Like you had college blogs.
Yeah.
Like
I think that's what I think. College radio became not right.
Yeah,
or Two Dope Boys. Like,
yeah, good point.
That was just kind of where college kids went for musical discovery or YouTube.
I even feel like the blog era is just definitely done.
Been done.
Yeah.
That was like a huge breaking point, though. I used to break records on.
Yeah, and as a DJ, it sucks because I used to love to go searching blogs.
Yeah.
Not as much, but almost as much as I used to like go into the record store and just kind of like, I mean, you never lose like that physical feeling of sifting through records.
Yeah.
But I loved going every day. Like I had like a thing. I would go to like Record Label, then Downright, then Two Dope Boys, and Pitchfork, and whatever. And it was like whatever I needed to grab, like especially if I was like in the mood to like make like a mix, or if I had like a certain club that I needed like a certain sound for. Like I used to do this rooftop party in Manhattan at the Empire Hotel, and it was just kind of like vibey stuff. So it didn't matter if it was 80s, 90s, just now, anything like certain remixes, like I needed to find those records. And now my old roommate, who still lives in New York, we always joke about like, where do we find this music?
Right.
Well, it's SoundCloud now, right? That's where people find the music.
Right, but then I guess you got to rip it from there, and then
right. Even YouTube. I feel like
is SoundCloud? Would you say like? I mean, there's been a big decline on SoundCloud. Do you think the SoundCloud era is done, or do you think
no? Because
what's your opinion on that?
I think that those kids still go to SoundCloud. I think that I think it's a subset.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like you've kind of as you get older, maybe you graduate to Spotify or Apple, whatever one you choose. Or I mean, nobody has Tidal, but like we
won't even mention it.
I think SoundCloud is the underground.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always going to have those kids, no matter how like older they get, or you're going to kind of just keep.
They're going to go somewhere.
People in, they're going to go to SoundCloud because it is so user generated. Because you can be a 17-year-old kid in your basement and upload to SoundCloud. You can't necessarily do that to Spotify.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to go through. You have to go to
CD
TuneCore or CD Baby,
yeah.
whatever. And those kids don't know how to do that. So SoundCloud, you can actually just go do that, and then you can get a couple of reposts from one of those big reposters, and next thing you know, you got a record deal.
The good old reposters.
How does YouTube kind of play into all these metrics now with music videos and stuff like that?
I would love to know what they're going to do.
Right. That's what we keep bringing up.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're. I mean, obviously, videos are like we use them for radio too because it's always like an injection.
Right.
So 4 or 5 weeks, 6 weeks after the record drops at radio, the video drops. Okay, cool. This is great. It's just like another like injection of life.
I wonder about like songs like "This Is America." You know what I mean?
Right, and
I
I think that because they dropped at the same time, like the song and video, when you have something that powerful, it would have been weird if you dropped that song because I don't think the song is as good without the video.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think SNL really made that pop.
Right.
It was,
right.
I mean, they have like all the statistics on that.
Right.
It was just insane.
Yeah, and I think that if you have just something like that important, you should drop them together.
100%. No, man, but they got YouTube Red, dude. Don't you pay for that?
I would love to know what they're gonna do.
Did you see IGTV?
They just need better content.
Have you been looking at that? The IGTV thing that they're doing now?
I like only accidentally when I mean to.
Because it keeps bugging
Because it just
you.
keeps popping up. Yeah,
that shit drives me crazy.
It's actually, I always feel like every time Instagram does an update, it worsens Instagram.
It makes it more confusing.
It's
like,
just too
you're
much.
losing the
Like
core
I
of
just
it.
wanted to see pictures and videos. Like I don't mind
I like the stories.
I like
though.
the stories.
Yeah.
Love the stories.
But that's
just
like
keep it at
learning from
that.
Snapchat. Like take the
Right.
great thing about
Right.
Snapchat, put it in.
But just keep it the pictures. Keep
Yeah.
it the stories.
Yep.
Go back to chronological.
Yeah. Because the thing I'm confused with now with Instagram is, okay,
They're trying to be a video platform.
I got your stories, and then I got IGTV, but that's like what, stories again?
It's like stories on steroids. It's
Like, I don't need that.
That's longer stories.
So just make your stories IGTV. Put them together. You know what I mean? Why'd you make an extra thing in there that keeps popping up?
Because they wanted the content creators, and I'm talking about the people who aren't just doing cell phone videos.
So allow them to do that on stories. You can skip it, or you can watch.
Or
the
just
story.
get rid of live at that point.
Do something different,
It's
man.
there's too much.
It is too much.
They're trying to get all the the rice gums on, you know what I mean?
I feel
on
like all these
IGTV.
things, like they're all like every time I don't like Twitter these days is like everybody. It's not even like the feed. It's like who likes everything. It's like I don't care. My friend Dave from high school liked this post. Like it's just that all the way down.
That's your
It's
notifications.
Like I
That's
don't
exactly
get any. I
it.
don't get any actual like people I'm following
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
It's like Crystal from college likes this.
Yeah. She liked the new Jay-Z video. You should too.
Yeah, I think we're at like a really weird point in social media.
Everything's
man?
bubbling and then
Yeah.
like waiting for someone to take over.
I deleted my Facebook like 6 months ago.
Yeah, I've been feeling that way. Brad
So many people.
still thinks that Facebook's
right after my birthday.
Yeah,
My
it's
birthday was in March.
just
so
for
not even 6
something.
months.
It's something.
Yeah.
It's very specific.
Yeah, it was like a cleansing, and I don't care. And I have to like,
You stop
and it
seeing
was just like
news.
politics and stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like Michael, you went to high school with is a racist Trump supporter. And you're like, oh God, I don't even want to know.
Reminder. You went to a racist college.
This. Right? Well, it was Jacksonville, Florida. So
Yeah. Well, there you go. Step one.
right.
Step one. Move to Florida.
So now it's just like a nice little cleansing to not have Facebook anymore.
Yeah. I'm almost like
Because I don't care. Like I don't care. Like my mom's cousin
yeah, right.
is mad about child support. Like, I just don't care.
Mad about you.
My mom's cousin's racist.
I'm
as
checked
well.
out of Twitter. I'll be completely honest. Like,
You've checked out of Twitter.
Yeah.
See, Twitter is everything to me. That's where I get my news. That's where I get everything. Like jokes. That's where I watch like the BET Awards. Like everything around
Twitter's
me is
still
like
pretty
Twitter's
heavy.
like. I think I've perfectly curated my Twitter for me.
Yeah, that's the thing though.
That's-
like,
yeah.
I had spent like months doing that with Instagram for me, you know?
Right.
Like now that you can just like hide people's posts and stories, but
Oh,
still
man.
Right.
keep
But
following
still
them,
keep following them.
so you don't hurt their
You didn't
feelings.
insult anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, you go out and they're like, dude, you unfollowed me on Instagram. I'm like, dude, it's not personal.
Right.
Dude, I love the top 5 that you had on MySpace. You know, your what was it? Top eight? Top 8 on MySpace.
Oh, they turned it to
Organize
top
your-
eight, yeah.
I was just talking about this the other day. Like you'd get like phone calls. Be like, yo, you took me off your top 8?
Dude, how come I'm at number 4 now?
Like, yo, sorry.
We're rolling up on you, dude.
Just like, yo.
Let's go roll up on Brian.
We got to get back to that. How can we get that back? Can we get a top 8 on
Tom.
Instagram?
Yeah, call Tom, dude. Hit him up. I bet he's on Instagram now. He's probably got an IGTV series.
Still same picture.
I bet you it is. It's an interesting thing to look up. So might be a little research a little later on.
MySpace was lit though. You know, you could customize it all. You had your music up there.
Remember when they tried to
pictures.
bring it back with Justin Timberlake and it failed? Like no. Like I signed up for it just out of curiosity, and it was just
I didn't even see
absolute
it.
trash.
What
so
happened?
bad.
You have to tell me that story because
It was like MySpace 2, whatever, like 2.0, and like Justin Timberlake was like bringing this whole thing back. I forget like what era
Get
that
it?
was.
Because he had that song.
Sorry, all of a sudden I'm coughing.
So what was MySpace 2.0 then? Like was it?
It was very music centric, and it was as Facebook kicked the crap out of them, they just tried to reboot as a very music centric social media.
Right.
It makes sense on paper.
I think Justin even owned part of the company or was like
Wow.
like vice president, something like that. Like he had like a major like if you went to it.
That's so crazy. Yeah, let's base our whole company off of Justin Timberlake bringing us back. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's give him 50% share.
Weird.
I guess the shares probably weren't worth
I mean,
much by
Jay-Z's
then.
apparently going to bring Pony or Puma basketball sneakers back.
That'd be cool.
That actually might work out.
He's got just signed
For Jay's pretty.
top 3 draft picks.
Yeah. But
I miss the old rivalries, like when Reebok was like a factor too.
Right. Now they all own each other. Like I think
know.
Reebok owns Adidas or vice versa.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I gotta look that up too.
Yeah, they had the pumps, you know,
I still have a pair of pumps. I wear them regularly.
You would, dude. I mean, what does your sneaker closet look like? I swear to God. This guy's got new sneakers every time he comes by the
tall.
studio.
It's tall.
It's tall.
That whole idea of everything like kind of like colliding, this owns that happened to music so quick, like within the 10-year lifespan, like everything got condensed to like Sony.
I
Warner,
tell people
and
now,
Universal.
To come, like I started doing on the New York City quote unquote industry scene in 2003, and from then till about now, all you really did was see your friends get let go from jobs, and guys that you would go to release parties with and listening parties, all of a sudden you would just never see them anymore. Like so and so would end up like at a job in real estate in Yonkers or whatever.
Right.
And there's only so few of us, especially like my generation. We were 23, 24-year-old kids. So all like the people that were in like their mid 30s were our bosses, and we never really got to go up. And they're like all that middle area, there's none of them are left.
Yeah.
Like it's just me and the 7 or 8 kids that are left over from like what I would call like my class.
That's
that do what I do. There's no 25-year-old me.
Yeah.
There's no.
That's a good point.
There's not even a 30-year-old me. Like because everybody was getting let go and all these labels were condensing and and there was just no room for anybody.
Right.
Like I got laid off myself one time and I think everybody I know, either their label folded. And it was like none of their own fault. Like I remember the day they let me go, they're like, yeah, we still actually need you, but we can't afford the head count. So we're just going to hire you on an independent level and you just don't come to the office anymore. And I'm like, that's awesome. So
That's great for me.
I was like, it's kind of cool. Thank you. I will never come
down.
back here.
Yeah.
But now to come on the other side of that with like us left, it's kind of amazing because labels are expanding. Like Elektra is coming back, and they're splitting Atlantic and Elektra. And, you know, we have just so many interesting things where the labels are finally expanding and everybody's staffing up. I just have a bunch of friends that got hired at Capitol, like for their first jobs, and
that's amazing.
And like, or not like first jobs, but like their first real jobs. Like, you know, they were assistants and now they're like directors and managers, and they're doing things on a national level. And everybody was just kind of, before was just sitting around going, all right, well, maybe one day, like, you know.
Was it you who, I think, you know, maybe before this was telling me that Capitol didn't have like any artists at a certain point in time?
No, they only had, especially not on like a rhythm rap level, but they just did the quality control deal, so their whole life changed. So that's why now that's why they need to staff up, because now they have
volume. They had the guys who would actually move some units.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And just the volume, like the there's so many artists that are attached to quality control. The good thing about Capitol before was that they had a deal, or I think they still do, had a deal with Caroline, which is a distribution company. And when certain records went, like they just went and upstream to Capitol and they would work them. But there wasn't a whole lot of like in-house stuff there that they were moving around with.
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing is that streaming has actually, and let's remember, the music industry as a business making money and monetizing itself is very new.
Yeah, within the last year and a half.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is super new still. And like, you know, all these guys, these old school guys that ran labels and stuff got so much slack, and people, they're fuckheads and all this stuff. But it's like, you know, they were doing what they knew. I mean, there wasn't like
the great
a whole
thing
textbook
now is
on this
a
shit.
lot of those guys are out of the way. And like the president of my company, our CEO, whatever you want to call him, John Janik is my age, and he's brilliant. And he looks at that. Like I read a book called The Appetite for Self-Destruction, and it was how the music industry destroyed itself in the digital age, and how they fought Napster, and how like and actually it even goes further back, like how they fought the tape and how they fought the CD, and
funny.
Everything along the way. These old men would just keep fighting.
They want these huge margins on stuff.
Right. And then the inevitable would happen, and then they would be like, oh my God, how do we catch up? Like, you idiots. Like, if you just adapted early, you would have been fine.
Yeah.
And John Janik, he sends us these emails corporate wide, and like about just what to look forward to and how things are going. Just really like interesting, deep thought out emails and just ways of how the industry is rethinking itself in real time.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, because these are like his thoughts, and he's like, okay, guys, like we just had a meeting, and it's an interesting thing. Like the X and Y is about to happen. So how do we deal with this? Let's just kind of always keep focused that these things are constantly changing and constantly morphing.
Right.
So it's amazing to work for somebody who's ahead of a company that thinks that way.
Yeah, that's refreshing, to say the least.
I feel like everyone's kind of job in the music industry kind of morphs. Like you said, you were a manager at one point for artists.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing I keep seeing, you know, just talking
you have to do everything.
You have to, no matter what, I think, especially like in today's climate of anything that relies on technology.
Right. And if you don't
music's all
do
technology.
it, you should at least know about everything.
Yeah.
You know, you should like...
You should know who to hit up, like the SEO guy.
Right. That's what we were talking about before. Yeah, I might not know how to do it, but I know who knows how to do it.
Exactly.
And I know that you should do it.
Yeah.
Understand its
really
relevance.
need to do it.
Right. Understand what you actually need to get from point A to point B, and how to go about it. What things cost. What this person does. You know, one person might do digital marketing, but does that mean that they're doing social marketing?
Right? They're so different now.
Because that's two very different things.
Yeah, and I think even if you just had like the same thing, like the DJ, his job is switched so many times. At one point, he was an EDM producer and making the records.
Right.
And where's that going? Yeah, exactly. What's the DJ in 2018 going into 2020, in your opinion?
They do everything. They run the business.
Well, we signed Megan Wright, who is hopefully gonna turn into the female Khaled. And that's what I think the DJ is always going to be the A&R of the streets, and always is going to be the conduit to what really is popular.
Yeah, they're the ones out there.
She has a record out with Tory Lanez and Hood Celebrity that we're pushing, and she works at Hot 97 every day. She's the midday girl, and then she's also a DJ in the clubs, and so she knows what's going on. And I think she doesn't produce, but she's an A&R, so she can put things together. And if you're not necessarily the one behind the boards, at least you should know how to make things work sonically.
Yeah.
Like, you might not be pushing the buttons, but you just know how to put the piece together.
Yeah, sometimes I find it really important just to know what doesn't sound right.
Right.
Like in A&Rs, producers, people that aren't so involved in the engineering and in the studio all the time, they're really good at being like, yo, that's not right.
Right.
So, but on closing here, man, I want to ask you one last question. I mean, really, I just want to hear about a really one of your most interesting things that's happened to you at Interscope or even in this circle being in LA, because you haven't been here that long, right?
No. No, I've only been here. It's been like it'll be a year next week. Because I remember I went for BET Awards was my final interview. They gave me the job that Monday or Tuesday. They called me like, you have it. I was like, all right, well, 4th of July is coming up. Can I have 4th of July with my family? And then I'll figure out how the hell I'm just going to pick up and move my life to LA.
Yeah.
So they did. So they gave me that week, and then I moved here. I think the 10th of July is when I actually landed here. Since then, it's been kind of a whirlwind. Like the first couple of months were crazy. Mm-hmm. What would be the craziest thing? I don't know. It's like this
is a whole new city. I mean, you're going from the East Coast to the West Coast. Got to be.
I mean, it's. I've had some funny nights in the Bay Area.
Yeah, always
that are just like hilarious. Somebody shot up my rental car with a pellet gun.
A pellet gun?
Yeah, and we were at a vegan soul food restaurant doing the most innocent thing in the world, and all of a sudden, put. And we're like, did somebody just shoot our truck up? Like I said, yeah, somebody shot the truck up. And we still to this day have no idea why or who or what. It was just, I don't know, it's Oakland.
Had your name on the list.
I think that would be the most interesting thing. Is just sitting in a vegan restaurant and getting get shot with a pellet gun.
Okay, great. Now we have a great poll quote. This is Brian Gaffey being shot up by a pellet gun. At a vegan what?
At a vegan soul food restaurant.
It's an oxymoron.
I was also at a backyard my first week or two here. I ended up at a birthday party for somebody I didn't even know. I was just there with this girl.
Typical LA thing, right?
And all of a sudden Pharrell and his wife walked in and they were hitting a piñata blindfolded. And I'm like, there's maybe 15, 20 other people there in the whole other party. I'm like, no, me and Pharrell are look at his wife, just hitting this piñata. And I'm like, yeah, Pharrell, that's funny. She's hitting a piñata and missing. He's like, yes, this is great. Pharrell.
All right, piñata.
You're incredibly cool.
Yeah, right. So what's up, man?
Yeah.
That's dope. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming on, dude.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And, it's always nice to get refreshing stories from, people that aren't from LA and, kind of new to the music scene here and stuff.
Right.
But also for our listeners to hear the inside scoop of what the radio really is anymore, because I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about that.
Sure.
So thanks a lot for joining us. You want to drop your socials?
Sure. My Twitter is DJ BRIG. My Instagram is DJ BRI_G because somebody stole the DJ BRIG when Instagram came around. So don't forget the underscore.
They stole it.
Yes, they stole it. I don't have Facebook.
Yeah, don't follow him on Facebook. He's not there.
That's some other Brian Gaffey. He's probably a racist.
He's probably racist from Florida. And go follow Kevin, KDE Beats, at KDE Beats on Instagram, and at Bradley HD on Instagram, and follow at Radium.
Radium_media.
There you go.
Get it right.
Get it right. We don't know that one. Thanks.